We'll be joined very shortly by Oli Brett, talk some Montreal, who are off to the next round of the Canadian Championship, beating TFC. Now, Jimmy, I had like 1.5 eyes on Vancouver last night, so I didn't get a feel for the TFC match, but there were some great goals in that game. It seemed like an entertaining game. Is that fair to say? You were on the call on One Soccer.
Yeah, especially second half, it tended to open up a little bit more, obviously, with TFC scoring first. And then you had 3 goals, what was it, within 10 minutes in the second half. And, both teams were on the front foot. Both teams wanted to win in regular time. And, there was quite a few chances going both ways. But I thought first half, TFC was, in my opinion, probably the better team. In the second half, Montreal kind of stepped up a little bit and competed. They weren't going anywhere. And sometimes when you see a team that's at bottom of the table that hasn't had a win and can't score, they go down a goal, they tend to capitulate, but not these guys. They kept on going for it, and you got to give them credit. They took it to penalties, and their penalties were bang on, and TFC struggled.
Oli Brett's joining us. Hey, Oli Brett, how you doing, pal?
Doing very well, kind of trying to get a feel for what it's like the morning after a CF Montreal win in 2025. Just trying to find my bearings here.
We forget a little bit, eh?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah. You lean back a bit. Are you wearing a United?
No, I'm not wearing it. It's
Ireland.
an Irish.
It's Irish. Okay, because I was going to ask you if you watched any Champions League yesterday and you saw the Inter-Barca quality and the goals in that contest, and then the bar maybe came down a little bit for the basement of MLS head-to-head in Canadian championships. And then you've got Europa League, maybe below that today with United playing. So I wanted to get your feelings on that.
This, by the way, felt like a setup from the get, Amy. So
sorry.
I didn't try and find some sort of intelligent answer. The only one I'll give you is I haven't watched Champions League in a long, long time as a United fan. So I think that's the point you're trying to make. and yes, I still did enjoy the match between Montreal and Toronto. And Jimmy, I'd be curious to know what team had to win the most. I understand it's a cup game. It's a really weird setup. I don't know if you guys spoke about it, but to have 2 MLS clubs playing the preliminary round.
Blame Craig for that, by the way.
Yeah, he was on the draw.
Yeah, but how are they even in the draw?
That's the point.
How does that even work? Well, anyway, I don't get that, but I'm curious to know like what the setup is in Toronto, because I really felt that it was an absolute catastrophe. If Montreal lost that match, you had to take a look at not the next 6 months, the next 18 months, 2.5 years. It was that much of a failure if you lost that match. What was it like in Toronto?
Well, I mean, I think both teams were desperate to win, weren't they? Just seeing where they are in the table and how their seasons are going, and I said it as well on the game last night that sometimes this can spring a team forward. You saw when Montreal won it, just what it meant to the players, and that maybe that win and that little bit of confidence, getting the goals, winning in penalties, it brings them a little bit closer together and can kind of springboard them forward. But with TFC at the beginning of the year, this is one trophy that right away that they look to win. It's mandated in the club where this is a trophy that we have to win every single year. They've won eight now. They've been to 6. They've lost 6 of them. They continue to get to those finals, and it's their way to get into the Champions Cup. So they'll be very disappointed how things went. I thought, once they went 1-0 up, I thought maybe they started to think, here we go, we're going to get the results here. But as I said before, Montreal wasn't going away. And now they'll probably be looking at their season thinking, where do we go from here? We've just lost to Montreal. We're out of the cup. We're 18 points, whatever it is, away from the top of the league. We're struggling here, desperately need to get our season going. But I don't know where they're going to get the answer and how they're going to find a way to move themselves up the table.
If I could just add to TFC's woes here, Martin Bailey was tweeting about season ticket holders for the club. So their season seat package is set for 20 matches. And with them out of the Voyageurs Cup now, not qualified for the Champions Cup and not invited to the Leagues Cup, the season ticket holders should be receiving credit for 2 missing matches. So, I mean, you think you're in like or at a low point or in the basement here in terms of expectations, and there's a sub-level. There's something underneath it, and that's where TFC is now. But I wanted to turn it to you, Oli, about CF Montreal.
If I can, when they're giving that credit, is it based on current market value or pre-season market value? Because that might not be the exact same price for season ticket holders.
Who knows? Maybe Jimmy knows.
And you get a $5 beer.
Yeah. There's tariffs on tickets now.
But with the season being so woeful with CF Montreal, I mean, those were two teams that were in a similar position there, but TFC had the win. They emphasized, and CF Montreal internally, that they wanted a trophy. That was early on, that was said. And you were talking on your own podcast with Fred Laure on Au Fond des Filets, which is terrific. Anybody who wants to know more about CF Montreal, tune into that you felt like they had all their eggs in one basket, but dangerously so. So do you think that this lone win here, the first one of the season, even though it's in Canadian Championships, is it a veritable turning point, or is it fool's gold at this point?
No, I'd say it's neither. I wouldn't get too excited about it, because bottom line is you didn't win that match, right? You won a penalty shootout. I think there's more in that. Basically, that game sums the whole season up so far. If Vrioni is available, they at least have 2, if not 3 wins under their belts. They just had way too many chances. I didn't look after last weekend's game, but they were at something like 13 expected goals and 4 scored. I mean, that's insanity. Like, you're so far below where you should be, even if you just split the difference. And that goal Vrioni scores, first of all, nobody besides Tom Pearce crosses that ball. Besides Tom Pearce, like Petrasso had the cross on Waterman's goal, but it's not the same thing. He just lofted it back post. But the quality of Tom Pearce's delivery, he would have crossed that for Prince Owusu, who works really, really hard, who creates chances, but he just doesn't put them away. And nobody has been doing so far this season. So to answer your question, if Vrioni is available, if only to do what he did last night, come in and get a goal as a sub, that team completely changes its makeup, because you believe in it. Now, the problem is, no matter how well you play, and the last 2 games haven't been great under Donadel, but the first few matches under him were way better in terms of content and quality of play than what you had for the first 5 games under Laurent Courtois before his firing. Even if you're good, you're just looking ahead of you and going, who's going to put it away? And the answer is no one. And it was such a clash between what you had at the end of last season, where not only Joseph Martinez was on fire, but beside him, you had Caden Clark, who was really good as well. And he's been off the boil since the beginning of the season. So if you can get Vrioni back, I think you can get really excited about the coming weeks. If he's only on and off as he's been for the last 3 weeks, it's still a worry. And this is interesting for a step forward in the Canadian Championship. Can it translate to MLS? We'll see against a really good Philadelphia team at the weekend, but I think that's too short, too small of a sample yesterday to be able to get really excited for CF Montreal.
Are you concerned then with Vrioni, the way that he came in? And, CF Montreal wants to develop youth and they want to lean on their academy, but they also want to take almost cast-offs throughout the league where they've maybe failed to deliver as a DP or otherwise, or one of these TAM players, and give them an opportunity with CF Montreal. But is fitness a concern? Because maybe he's a guy, he gets more minutes. I think Owusu, as you said, hardworking, doesn't have that clinical finishing, but I think he exists in isolation. He doesn't get anybody else going around him. Can Vrioni be that guy to maybe get somebody like Clark underneath him and that attacking fluency going for CF Montreal?
Or maybe even Prince Owusu, because that's a great question. But speaking to Donadel over the last few weeks, you feel he would like to play with 2 strikers. Originally, when those 2 guys came in, everybody, including myself, went, it's going to be one or the other. And I think they were kind of presenting it that way, saying one can get in behind, the other one can be a target and hold it up a bit more. But I think they're a good pairing together if you manage to keep them fit and get Vrioni to start a match at some stage over the next, I'll say, few months, just to be careful. But where it becomes an issue is twofold. They knew Vrioni was injured. Did they know he'd be injured to the point of not starting a game before May? If the answer is yes, you had to go and pick somebody else up top, because now Sunusi Ibrahim, who's a star of the Canadian Championship, I mean, he just can't be on that pitch for a Canadian Championship match and not score. Where is he? He's not used. You use a really, really young and completely inexperienced Owen Graham Roach, which is brilliant for your academy, but it says an awful lot about Sunusi. The use of Vilsain and his health tells you an awful lot about him. So I think that this idea that they went and picked up 2 strikers in the off season that we had, in terms of, okay, they can carry the load, and then you've got other guys in who the club believes behind them, that was wrong, because the club, Courtois didn't really believe in the strikers that he had. He systematically went with Prince Owusu. Same thing with Donadel. So my thing is, yes, you went and picked up Owusu and Brioni, but you had to go, and you probably still have to go and get somebody else to pick up the minutes that you need, either when they're injured, not available, when you need to turn it over, or just to finish a match off with some fresh energy.
This result obviously helps Donadel and his standing at the club. How secure is he, do you think, in this job?
I think, first of all, everything I'm hearing, the players love him. I think he's very clear about his ability to just have his own ideas and not get affected by questions that are asked, or maybe even what's the pressures of the club itself. It reminds me a bit of what Wilfried Nancy had as an attitude after his spat with Joey Saputo mid-2022. You just had the feeling that Nancy went into a kind of I'll just do it my way mode, and if it works out, fine. If it doesn't, I'll be on to the next thing, and it'll just be meant to be that way. I get that feeling from Marco Donadel, because in terms of ideas, is he juggling maybe a bit too much from one game to the next? Maybe. At the same time, he's still discovering a group. Like, he wasn't there as an assistant last year or the year before. He just came in January. So I think the club really has confidence in him. Gabriel Gervais, when he was appointed as interim coach, said, we're going to give him all means necessary. Let's be careful. All means didn't include money. So that is a sort of a mean that you appreciate as a coach, but we'll see over the summer. But I think everybody would like for Donadel to work out, including the club. So I think they're going to give him a lot more time than you probably would somebody else who's there with the interim tag.
Oli, can you give our listeners a little bit of context there? Because he was hired before the season, either late 2024 or early in January. When he was named, everybody thought, okay, this is our future coach here. So do you feel like that undermined Courtois a little bit?
I thought so at the time, and I definitely thought so when they fired Courtois after 5 games, because my conclusion of all that is, if you hadn't made the playoffs last year, and if Joseph Martinez wasn't just on fire, as I said before, and got you into the playoffs, Courtois was probably gone. So now you start thinking about trying to give him tools, give him more of a voice in terms of recruiting and picking up players, which was interesting to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. But when they had the post-mortem at the end of last year, Gabriel Gervais, CF Montreal's president, also said he's very green, he's still inexperienced, so we need to help him out in what he's not great at yet and see how he grows in the role. I thought that was absolutely okay. Like, he wasn't throwing him under the bus. It was just a fair assessment of the situation last year. But obviously, bringing in Donadel, because the crux of it is that Donadel was in the running for the head coach position when they ended up hiring Laurent Courtois. Right. Our understanding is that it was either Donadel or it was Courtois. Courtois could have been Olivier Renard's guy when he was sporting director, and Donadel maybe more the clubs or the owners. In the end, a year after hiring Courtois, you bring in his main competitor as an assistant coach. Like, to me, it was obvious Donadel was going to be the next man up. Now, was that 5 games in or 2 years in? I couldn't tell you at the time, but obviously they knew that they had a backup plan if ever it didn't work out with Courtois. To be honest with you, I didn't expect it to not work out that fast, and for the conclusion to be like, let's go, 5 games in, we're changing the coach. But to be honest, it looks like the right decision in the current context.
So do you think ownership appreciate that this season is unsalvageable, and it's all about, okay, let's get some minutes, some blood, some young players. It's more about next season at this point, which is some damning indictment a quarter of the way through the season if you're a fan, but you understand why that might be the case.
I'm not sure the fans will understand the situation, in the sense that you try. It's very hard to follow who came in for what reason, right? Tom Pearce is a great example of that. Now, you can dislike his qualities as a defender, but he's got an atomic bomb of a left foot, right? Be it he nearly scored off a free kick yesterday. He has crosses, like his ability to create proper scoring chances from a crossing position is probably better on his own than the rest of the team combined. But he kind of doesn't fit. But he was only bought once Oli Brett left in July. So you're trying to think, okay, maybe he was recruited for a Laurent Courtois way of playing, but is the Laurent Courtois way of playing so far removed from Marco Donadel, who was brought in to be his assistant? There's something there that's hard to follow in terms of who was brought in to play what role, because you really get that sense of starting from scratch under Donadel. And that's the most worrying thing. We're looking at the Whitecaps. You know, a lot of people were talking to me about the Caps over the last week or two. What I find interesting is that everybody gets that sense that they creeped up on everyone, but they were interesting over 4, if not 5 transfer windows, without like big bangs of a transfer like Atlanta did up top, but it was just coherent. And 2 years ago, 2023, I believe, when Gressel left, Vanni Sartini was saying, we sent a message to the fans, we sent a message to the dressing room as well. We brought in the Adikubes. I think that's when Richie Larea came in, and we were sending them a message of not just releasing players, but bringing guys in that were able to be good straight away. And I think that's going to be the interesting part this year. Even if you don't make the playoffs, can you bring young players on, but have those Rionis? And like, you brought in Fabian Herbers. I thought he was a really interesting guy to plug some holes in the middle, maybe not start every game, but at least be that kind of veteran player, 31 years of age. There's not many 30-year-olds in that team, and bring on some youngsters. But now it's practically only youngsters playing, and I'm not sure that you're able to get full value for their maturation and their development. And I think that's the big challenge for the rest of the season with CF Montreal.
Before we let you go, Oli, maybe just a quick word on Sirois, because I think I was reading JF Teotonio on Blue Sky, and apparently Sirois had a save in Leagues Cup last year on a penalty, but I don't remember it. So I'm thinking about that wild card match that they lost at Stade Saputo to Atlanta. Pearce missed there, and Pearce also missed last night as well. So for a guy who's so precise and has such quality service, that's surprising. But Jonathan Sirois saves 2 of those penalties, and he comes close on a third. I can't remember who it was, but he comes really, really close to making 3 saves. So how big was that for him, in the fact that he makes saves on penalties and he wins the game essentially for his team?
Just a side note on penalties, and as a guy who was a half decent crosser and a half decent free kick taker, but couldn't score a penalty to save his life, those are 2 very different beasts, Amy. Yeah, so I have fair. A lot of empathy for Tom Pearce. I was an absolute disaster at penalties. I think it was huge for Sirois, but more because Breza was really good at the weekend. And if Breza wasn't that good and didn't have that commanding presence, I think it was only his second start in a full calendar year for Breza. I didn't expect him to step into the role and, first of all, makes it. Obviously, you didn't win the match, fair enough, but he made some big saves. He came out strong when he had to pick stuff up in the air in his box. He was commanding. You just felt he looked like a number 1. That's why I was expecting him to start against Toronto. Now, they went with Sirois, fair enough, but that did kind of put the heat on Sirois a little bit, and he answered. Because remember, it was it against Forged, 4 years ago, 2021 maybe, where Breza was a goalkeeper, and they ended up having everybody take penalties. Forge's keeper took a penalty. Breza took one as well, and he'd been good in that penalty shootout. So you could have said, look, based on the track record, Breza is a big man. He can be imposing on penalties if we need him. You could have even made a switch at the end of the game or planned it that way. You just went all in with Silva and he answered. So I think that at least in the short term, you're evacuating that conversation of should Breza be getting a look in? And I think that's very good for at least Jonathan Silva's perspective.
What a time to be a fan of Canadian soccer teams other than Vancouver, eh? So it's a lot of fun. You mentioned they're Philly this weekend for Montreal.
It's brilliant to be able to just be happy that Messi lost, but for other reasons than Messi simply losing. You know, you can be genuinely happy for whoever it is, put 5 away on them over 2 legs.
Yeah, those guys be telling their great grandkids about the time they smashed Messi, not once, but twice. It's just incredible. Oli, as always, mate, brilliant. Thank you so much. And we'll chat to you very, very soon.
Have a great one. All the best.
Oli.
Oli.
That's Oli Brett. OlivierBrett.com, by the way. You can find out all of Oli's. He's everywhere, football-wise, in Canada. And should be in even more places, quite honestly. It's fantastic. But yeah, quite a time for Montreal. They'll take that win. It'll feel like a cup final, I'm sure, in some regards. When's the draw? Do we know who they're playing next? Any idea?
I think it might be the winner of whoever Forge gets.
Forge in Halifax, I think.
Oh,
yeah, exactly, Jimmy. Yeah.
Oh,
I think it might be July.
Then, we've been waiting for this, CPL real breakthrough in the Canadian Championship. Maybe this will be the year.
Maybe this is their year. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the MLS teams out. One of the ones that remains isn't very good. Could be interesting. Thank God TFC fans will be spared the indignity of being smashed by a CPL team. That's good news. Silver lining.
CF Montreal lost to Forge last year.
Yeah,
it was right before Kwesi Poku left on that massive transfer. And I was like, who the hell is this guy?
He's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy, so back to TFC then, before we leave. Okay, so 1 to 10, like 10 is their champions. 1 is unmitigated panic at this point. They don't know what to do. Where is TFC sitting on the drama scale?
Well, they're not in a good place, and we all know that. I think they still have to get rid of a few players in order to bring certain players in to make the squad stronger. I think Robin Fraser knew exactly what he was inheriting when he took over, and it is going to take a little bit of time. I think you'll see some movement in the summer. I think they've got their eyes on a few targets, and if things go according to plan, I think they'll be able to shift a couple of players and get the ones that they wanted. But look, we knew at the beginning of the season there was no big expectations. It wasn't a team that was going to win it. It wasn't a team that was going to go far in the playoffs. They knew what they have to do. They knew that they're stuck right now with this squad, and they've got to make some moves.
Can you talk a little bit about Corbiano's miss? Just a little bit.
What, his penalty?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What about the goal?
Pretty bad.
Take a goal, in fairness. Come on now.
Good goal, caught a deflection. I actually liked his assist on Spicer's goal even better than his goal.
Yeah, I thought he was very good.
He was great on the great on the night.
Brilliant. You don't realize how quick he is. I mean, he blew past Waterman, he blew past Petrasso. He's got great pace. He gets in the right areas. A couple times that his final ball let him down, but the one time that he did get in and squared it over to Spicer was just perfect. The whole play was brilliant. I thought he was great, and I thought Flores as well, for me, was probably one of the best players. If he didn't get man of the match, Corbiano, if he didn't get man of the match, then Flores would have definitely, because I thought he was causing havoc in the middle of the park. Made it very difficult for Saliba. He made it difficult for Clark, and Saliba ended up coming off, and you could see that. He wasn't really up to the challenge, and he didn't really like that physical play when Flores was all over him. Every time he got in the ball, he was coming through the back of him. But I thought he played very good. Spicer was decent as well, and it was a shame to see also ended up popping his shoulder, freak accident. So he'll be missed, and that's another worry for TFC now, knowing that
Was it a bad injury, Jimmy?
Yeah, it was. It was like a little collision, and then one of the TFC players, as he was trying to jump out of the way, landed on top of Oso, and Oso right away grabbed his shoulder and just looked at the bench and went, "My shoulder's popped."
Oh no!
And they came out, and I guess they put it back in place and took him off the pitch. But yeah, it was just one of those plays that everybody fallen and landed awkward on top of him.
So he'll be out for a few weeks.
Yeah.
That's not what they need, by the way. That's my in-depth analysis.
Not at all.
You don't want to be losing Jonathan Osorio if you're TFC right now.
No,
Ouch.
even the men's national team, though, thinking about the next window, right?
June.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that far away, is it? If you
It's
think about
not.
it. It's
1st of May.
Yeah, May Day, which is very fitting for TFC.